Hello, everyone, and thank you for jumping on today. We are talking about how you can turn your plans and your business plans into production and more production. So, we have some special guests that I'm going to be ushering in just a minute to really give you the rundown on how you can make a difference in your business and doing a few simple things that are really going to help project your 2026 to be your best year yet. All right. Welcome, Brian. Thanks for joining us today. We're really looking forward to this.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, great. Okay, so we have Matthew who's going to be joining us as well. I'm going to usher him into the webinar so we can go ahead and get rocking and rolling. All right, there they are, stars of the show today. So, thanks to you again, everyone, for joining us. Brian and Matthew are really going to be kind of taking the reins from here and giving you the rundown on how you can kind of turn your plans into some production for 2026 and really elevate your business. All right, guys, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. Matt, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so I think the idea today is that if we could see you, and that's always the tricky thing about a webinar, right? But if we could see you, I would ask you, we would ask you to tell us the five things that you think top producers do that set them apart, right? So like in your notes, if you're watching this back or you're participating live or you're with us, right? Like write it down, right? Like, put out there, like, what do you think that is? Put it in the chat box, right?
I think I
What are
always
the
see it in the
five,
chat. Yeah.
yeah, what are the five things, right, that you think the top producers do that set them apart in their business? Right. And by the way, if you're sitting there going like five things, I don't want to do all that work. Great. Put one thing in the chat box that you think sets people apart and achieving at a higher level. Okay. Cool. Right. While you're doing this, by the way, I think I don't know if we introduced ourselves, right? We'll just do that quickly as you're writing what you think sets top producers apart. I'm Matt Teeter. I'm executive leadership coach. Been in real estate for the last 13 years. I've coached 500 people in mortgage, title, insurance, real estate, and that period of time, 24,000 plus coaching calls. My wife and I have a sales team here in Boston, Massachusetts, and I own a couple title companies as well. Brian, while people keep answering, who are you?
Yeah. So I got started in real estate in 2007 in Austin, Texas, and became a top producing agent there. Led different real estate offices, and for the last about 11 years, have been coaching people in all different parts of the real estate industry, but leaders and a lot of executives, entrepreneurs, and some of the top, producers in different parts of all over the United States. Um, what we're going to share today is things that we've learned from working with all different producers and leaders within our industry.
Yeah, so we're going to share, five things top producers do that non-producers or lesser producers don't do, right? Please don't take it the wrong way. Don't go like, am I a non-producer? I'm a less producer. We're just saying, what do the best people do that other people don't, right? And what we're going to kind of talk through with you guys today is you're going to get the ability to say, like, do I do it? Do I not? Is that an opportunity for me going into 2026? There's no judgment in this. We can't see you. We can only see in the chat box, right? We wouldn't judge you anyway. So it's all about you deciding what you're going to take on and what you could do something with. So we got lots of answers. I love your participation. What you guys said is they answer the phone, they return phone calls, they connect with prior clients, they push past no, they're consistent. Time management, follow up. They do what they say they're going to do. Consistent follow up, right? Uh, uh, you know, they keep contact with your sphere of influence, right? Okay, okay. And there's some other ones in there that, are funny. So the I like your answer, right? Thanks for giving your answer. Here's our answer. So five, and we're going to give you the answer, right? There's kind of a classic rule of presentation. Say what you're going to say, tell them what you're going to say it, and then tell them what you said, right? So we're going to walk you through what our answer is, right? And then we're going to review with you what it all means, right? And what you can do with each area. And if you've got a question while we're talking, or you've got feedback or something, throw it in the chat box. Brian and I lead a call together every single day with between 30 and 50 leaders. We've done it for the last 4 years. So we can watch the chat and talk and interact. We'll make it work. We promise. Okay. So 5 things top producers do that everybody else necessarily doesn't do or have an opportunity to do. Number 1, they set clear goals. Number 1, they set clear goals. And I'm sure Brian will probably put this in the chat, or I can do it in a minute. Number 1, they set clear goals. Number 2, they time block their schedule. Number 2, they time block their schedule. Number 3, they lead generate with pre-selected lead generation activities. They lead generate with pre-selected lead generation activities. Number 4, they have a database they communicate with at least weekly. They have a database they communicate with at least weekly. And number 5, they have accountability for the first 4. They have accountability in place for the first 4. Okay. So set clear goals, time block their schedule, lead generate. They have a database they communicate with weekly, and they have accountability to the first 4. Okay, so let's go. We're gonna break that down and talk through what does that actually mean one by one, so we can talk about like set clear goals. Okay, what do we mean by that, right? If you are coaching with Brian and I, at the very least, and this is very least, right? We would have 45 coaching calls a year, and 45 masterminds a year, and one-on-one communication. So this would be kind of the very least. But at the very least, you would have a wealth goal, right? Typically, most people, that's an income goal, first and foremost, and you'd have a health goal. So at the very least, and top producers at the very least have a money goal and a health goal. Okay, they got a money goal and a health goal. And when we look at that together, right, the money goal, we're going to talk about how to set that goal, how to set an income goal, right, is why we're in business, right? I don't know about you, right? You can put in the chat box if you're a nonprofit, right? If you're a nonprofit in real estate, awesome, put in there, I'm a nonprofit, I get all my money away. But if you're not a nonprofit in real estate, I'm not a nonprofit in real estate, right? I earn money for my family, right? I'm a for-profit business. You're probably the same thing. So we're setting an income goal because we're a for-profit business, right? We work to earn money to be able to fund our lives, right? The health goal is, listen, if Brian and I got on here and we were super low energy, and you looked at us and you go like, these guys don't look like they don't look good. Like we were like gaunt, right? And Brian was like yellow on here. You'd be like, they don't look healthy. Like, are they okay? And we were low energy, and I bring that up to say, like, we're salespeople, right? So people buy our energy, we sell our energy, right? Our health is actually one of the most valuable assets we have, but it's also how we deal with, this is a high stress business, right? I don't know about you, right? Maybe for you guys, like high stress, I don't have any stress at all. Good, teach us, right? But for most of us, it's a high stress industry. So we've got a lot of stress. We need a health goal, we need a wealth goal, right? Or an income goal. And then the other thing, Brian, if we kind of look at the basics of next year, and I'm going to dig deeper in income, we also look at like, where do you want to travel? What's your dream vacation? Where do you want to spend your money in other ways, right? So then we can start getting into these other areas of setting goals that are more personal and more clear, because the more you have your life defined, the greater clarity you have overall for your goals, right? The easier it is for you to say, here's what I need to earn, and the easier it is to stay motivated to work every day, right? Anything you'd add on that before I dig into the 5 steps of an income goal really quickly?
Yeah, just specifically on the the travel thing. Matt, you just recently took a trip,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it causes us to start asking a different question, which is like, if you were going to think about like the vacation of a lifetime, meaning something you've been thinking about for a long time, or you say like, someday I'm going to do this. It's my someday thing. I'm going to challenge you to think about what would it be like for you to do that in 2026. Now again, I'm not talking about the vacation you always take. I'm not talking about the thing you've done before. I'm talking about the thing that's in your head where you go, I've never been to this place, or I've never done this thing. I someday I'm going to. Great. Make someday right now. And I don't mean to make this dark, but I do mean to make it real. there's probably, if you're doing that, unless you're doing it by yourself, which is cool. If that's your plan, that's great. But you're doing it with somebody else, they're here now. I don't know if they're going to be here 5 years from now. I don't know if they're going to be here 10 years from now. But it's a lot more likely for it to happen if we plan for it sooner rather than later, right? So part of what we need to do is get very clear on what is that vacation? Who do we want to have this time with? Who do we want to be spending time with? What does it cost, right? And then we'll start looking at those things. When will it take place? How will my business be in a place such that I can be gone during that time? These are the types of questions you need to ask yourself. And when it comes to setting clear goals, we talked about, there's a money goal, there's a health goal, there's something that's going to drive you and motivate you to do something that's like a unique experience. This is what actually causes you to do something different than what we've done in the past.
Okay, really quick on income, right? This is kind of inside setting clear goals. If I'm going to set an income goal for 2026, it's going to be comprised of 5 areas, right? You notice like coaches, like it's always 3 or 5 or 7. Yeah, we're always going to give you lists. So there's 5 areas that comprise your income goal: personal expenses, professional expenses, lifestyle expenses. Okay, that's my personal budget, my professional budget. So what it costs to run my household, what it costs to run my business. Lifestyle expenses are non-fixed, consistent expenses. So what does that mean? If you take your spouse on a date night every week, that's a lifestyle expense. Take your kids to a movie every week, that's a lifestyle expense. So personal household budget, professional budget for my business, right? Lifestyle expenses. And then the big one, number 4, is wants and desires. For most people, wants and desires is the money that they're going to save, the money that they're going to invest, the money that they're going to give away, the debt that they're going to pay off, right? The debt that they're going to service. And then on top of that is, the money that they're going to use for travel. That's kind of for most people what wants and desires are, right? And so we take 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. Personal expenses, professional expenses, lifestyle expenses, wants and desires. We add those together and we multiply by number 5, which is our effective tax rate. So we're going to take the first 4, add them together, and we're going to multiply by like 1.25, which would be a 25% tax rate, or 1.33, which would be a 33% tax rate. And that's our math equation for our income goal. Personal expenses, professional expenses, lifestyle expenses, wants and desires. That's the big one, right? Times those 4 added together, times our tax rate equals our income goal. For most people, when they do the math that way, the goal that they set is too low. The goal they set is too low. So that's a good way to check your income goal for next year, or set your income goal for next year if you don't have one. Okay, Brian, I think that's good for clear goals.
Yeah.
How do we move on to time blocking? How do we start?
So time block schedule is always fun, right? Because you may have been on trainings like this right before, and you hear, okay, time block schedule. Yeah, I've got that. What we're going to talk about is there's a lot of these things you're going to hear today through a new lens, or you're going to hear the different layers of what a true top producer does that maybe is different, right? So there's kind of 3 layers of thinking in this. The first one is, do you have a time block schedule? Meaning, do you have a schedule that you look at and the things that are important for you are on the schedule, right? It's like kind of your intention or your plan. How do I get all these things done? How do I make sure I'm taking care of my current clients, building a new database, driving future business, and doing all the personal things I want to do? That's kind of our intentional time block schedule. The second one is a little bit of a grammar lesson, I guess. Like most people think of a time block schedule like it's a block, like it's a thing that's on your schedule that you look at and it looks like a Lego block or whatever, right? But block is also a verb. So it means that whatever you have on your schedule, everything else is blocked from that activity. So if it's lead generation, for example, you block all the other activity from that, meaning like that's the only thing you do during that time, right? So the second kind of layer to this is you have a schedule and you actually follow it, like you actually do it, right? The third one is this, which is I'm going to encourage you in 2026 to think about this. Like, what would it look like for you to practice presence? And I don't mean like, oh, Christmas is coming, time to wrap the presents. Not that kind of presence. I mean like actually being wherever you are, right? So we get to work with a lot of people, right? And it's kind of like they have time for lead generation, but during their time for lead generation, they might be thinking about the thing they were supposed to do before they left the house, but they ran out of time and they were hurried and they were in traffic or whatever happened, right? And so they're kind of like half their minds somewhere else, right? And then later we're on an appointment and we're thinking about, oh, we didn't really get the results we wanted during that lead generation time, and my phone's buzzing in my pocket, and maybe it's somebody trying to get a hold of me about something, so we're not as effective, so we don't close, right? And then later we're doing some administrative stuff, and we're thinking about the listing we didn't finish up with, so we got to follow up with them. We didn't get enough leads earlier. Had a hard time earlier in the day getting that thing done at home, right? And then at the end of the day, when you're spending time with people you care about the most, whoever that is for you, you're thinking about all the stuff that didn't happen during the day. So we're not being fully present with them either. And what happens is that becomes a cycle. It just continues, right? There's everybody ever heard of the show Parks and Recreation? Yeah. And there's one of my favorite characters on there, Ron Swanson. And my favorite quote is he says, "I'll never understand why somebody would half-ass two things when they can whole-ass one thing." I think it's genius, right? So it's to do that, it means you're fully present. It means like when you're with the people you care about, you're just present there. You know, when you're doing your lead generation, you're just lead generating. When you're, on your appointment, just be fully in the appointment. Don't worry about your phone buzzing. Don't worry about whatever you're being notified about, but you have to give time to that in your schedule. So over time, if that is overwhelming to you to think like, but where do I handle other things? You need to put things in your schedule like, this is when I handle the extra stuff, or the things that came up, or the oops. Like I had, just have a time in your block that says like oops cleanup, right? Okay, great. Then you know that you can handle it later. The problem is if we're not present, we're not actually doing any of the things we wanted to do. We're not present for anything, and we're less effective.
Okay, so I think we've gone through setting clear goals and what we need to do with time blocking. Let's move on to the lead generate with pre-selected lead generation activities. So what do we mean by that? Well, the first thing I talk about is what we don't mean by that in this case, right? What we don't mean by that is if I ask most agents, of course not you, you're on this call, but if I ask most other agents, right, what their lead generation activities are, they tell me the same list: database, circle of influence, sphere of influence, what people call SOI or COI, right? And referrals. So there's a database, the SOI, COI, and referrals, right? I know it's not you, but I do hear it from most people. What's interesting as a coach is when I ask somebody how they lead generate, what they're telling me when they answer that way is how they lead follow-up. All of those are forms of follow-up. These are the types of things that we do after I already have a relationship with my sphere or circle of influence, right? Or people in my database, right? Or referral partners from other people, right? Or so it's something that's already, it's based on what's already occurred, what's already happened. Lead generation is the act of generating a lead, of generating something new, of adding something into what I'm taking on, of speaking to somebody I don't know. So when we ask about lead generation, and by the way, the other reason of why do top producers do this is your database, my database, our database all has a leak. One of the things we don't talk about in real estate is your database has an attrition rate. Why that happens, and again, it's the truth of life. We don't like to talk about these things, but people in your database die, unfortunately. People in your database permanently move out of the area or the country, right? People in your database make the very last transaction of their life, right? People in your database decide to, give up their cell phone and stop communicating. All of these things occur. And so your database, and by the way, the last one is you have competition, right? People in your database on average are in 8 to 10 other real estate agents' databases. Everyone in your database on average is on 8 to 10 other people's databases, which is why number 4 on this list is so important, how often we communicate with them. But we're still on number 3, which is lead generation. Why do we lead generate? To talk to new people. Why do we have to lead generate? Because our database has an attrition rate. So more than anything, lead generation starts with the replacement rate of just getting our database back to where it was before we lost about 10 to 15% of it every year through the attrition that happens naturally in the real estate business. So most of the stuff people say, database, SOI, COI, follow-up, right? Those are follow-up systems. They're really important to do every day, but lead generation is how we add new people in, right? And again, these are the activities, the ones that people don't like us to say out loud, right? Like expireds and FSBOs, make sure you're TCPA compliant, right? Because they go like, I don't really want to do that, right? We're door knocking, right? We're open houses, right? But these are kind of those class examples. If you have the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, right, you open up page 137, there's a list of them. Today, it could be even easier than that. You could open ChatGPT or Gemini, right, or Claude or whatever AI tool you use and say, give me a list of 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 or 200 lead generation activities. In fact, what a lot of agents will do is they'll take a behavioral assessment, like their DISC assessment or a KPA or something else. They'll throw that in their AI tool and they'll ask their AI tool, based on my behavior, generate a list of lead generation activities that I should commit to, that I could consistently do based on how I'm wired. And a lot of people are finding that's pretty cool in customizing what they'll actually commit to and stick with, right? Utilizing AI. All that being said, it's not just the follow-up. That's follow-up stuff. This is how we generate what's new. The only other comment I'm going to make, because Brian's got a piece here, is we have to remember that for the last several years, up to maybe the last 24 months or so, we kind of got away with just lead generation, meaning I could contact someone and they were ready to go and I did business with them, right? Great. And we really should be nurturing people, like a lot of people say. We're going to use a different term in a second. We really should be following up. Unfortunately, most agents are transactional. It's an opportunity for a lot of us. And so we've just been lead generating, working the person, they're ready to go and taking the action. Over the last 24 months, as the affordability gap has continued to increase, there's been some challenges in the market. There's been a slowdown in many places. We're back in a market where we have to work on what we would call lead development, which is I generate the lead, and that person, for financial reasons or kind of mindset reasons, or a combination of both, is not ready to transact yet. They've got limiting beliefs. They got something going on. They've got mindset issues. They're concerned about it. They're concerned about market or what's going on, or administration or politics or economics or something, right? That we've got to work them through, right? Or they've got a financial situation that they're not credit eligible. They don't have the down payment, right? That we're going to work them through. So remember that today we're back in a market where we're lead generating, but we're also looking at lead development. So I'm going to work with the people that are ready right now. And then I'm going to work in development and follow up with the people to get them ready over that 3, 6, 9, 12-month window to transact with me later in the year. Brian, I think you've got something on like a system of 4 things we could do each day around that as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to share this model. It's called a daily 10-4. Okay, so it's very simple. The daily 10-4 are daily and weekly activities that we do. There's 10 of each, right? So the first one is each day you have 10 new contacts. You're speaking with 10 people that you haven't spoken with before. You're meeting new people, right? So you have to find, how are you going to do that? What are the different things that you have interest in that you could find a common interest with people? Where are places where you can get in front of a lot of people or be referred to or whatever it is? But you're going to have 10 people that are new conversations for you every day, right? The second one is we're going to add 10 people to our database that weren't already there. So ideally, you could meet 10 new people. You could get their phone number, email, their address, right? Hey, is it okay if I follow up with some stuff? Great. You add them to your database. It could be the same 10 people for each of those, right? The third one is you do that every day, right? Third one is you handwrite 10 note cards. Brian, does mail still work? Yes. Think about the last thing you got in the mail that was handwritten. Did you read it? I bet you did, right? Because there's junk mail, there's bills. That makes up the majority of most people's mailbox, I'm pretty sure. And then there's something, and maybe it's handwritten. If it's handwritten, I'm reading it. Those are the types of things that get left on our counter. Everything else goes right in the receptacle. So I'll also say that like a personal touch like that is going to be more valuable in the future than it ever has been in the past, right? People have a lot of tech interaction, which is fine. It is what it is, right? But that personal human touch is going to be something that is actually seen as more valuable. But you handwrite 10 cards a day. It could be to the 10 new contacts you had. So see, it could just be 10 people, 10 people, 10 people, 3 different activities. The fourth one is you would go and preview at least 10 properties in your market, in the market area that you're focused in every week, right? So preview 10 properties a week. So 10 new contacts, 10 contacts added to your database, 10 handwritten note cards, and then preview 10 properties a week. Here's why this is powerful. Think of somebody think of somebody brand new to the real estate industry. They don't have anybody that they know somehow magically. They don't know anybody. They don't have any business. They don't have any pipeline, but they took this on, right? And each day they did these things. They talked to new people, added them to the database, hand wrote cards, went and previewed 10 properties a week. We go over a year like this, right? For this example, we're going to use 200 working days. That's 4 days a week for 50 weeks, or it's 5 days a week for 40 weeks. Okay. So 200 days out of the year, they do this. So what that means is they met 2,000 new people in a year. They added 2,000 people to a database that they're going to now communicate with consistently, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And they wrote 2,000 note cards and sent them, and previewed somewhere in the ballpark of 400 to 500 properties in your market area. Do you think that person is building a good business? Absolutely. If somebody told me this is what I've done year one, I'm going to do the same thing year two, I'm going to do the same thing year three, I'd be like, can I invest in your business? I'm betting on the future of that person. Absolutely. Absolutely, I am. You can do the same thing, right? So no matter how big your business is today, this is an activity where you can look at it and say, well, could I just do that every day? If I did, what would be different? What would be different in my business?
Okay, we've covered setting clear goals. We've covered time block your schedule. We've covered lead generation, pre-selected strategies, right? Talk about the fourth thing that top producers do is they have a database that they communicate with at least weekly, right? A database they communicate with at least weekly. The first thing I'm going to talk about is, why weekly? And the answer to that question is, how many emails did you get today? Did you get 10? Did you get 50? Did you get 100? Did you get 1,000, right? On average, Amazon touches people that are Amazon Prime members, sends an email, right? That's what I mean by touches when we use that, right? So it sends the emails to their Prime members 3 times a day, right? So it's 1,000 touches a year. So we're asking to send 1 email a week, right? And we have businesses that have membership with or subscription with, consider your clients, that are contacting us 3 times a day. So when we say a minimum weekly, when you looked at kind of the older models or systems, if you've heard of a 33 touch or a 36 touch, many of those were bi-monthly, twice a month. Why that's not frequent enough is it's just too much time in between. And there's way more communication today that people receive via their email than we ever received before. So it's a weekly email. When we think about what is the weekly email, right, that we're going to send out, there are versions or ideas that you could send out. One could be, right, every week that you're going to send out a weekly newsletter. So you're going to basically say, what's happening in your town or your area, what restaurants or bars are opening up, what are the Christmas festivities that are happening right now, right, or events. You're going to show maybe some featured properties or featured listings or properties for you. You're going to have a number update of what's happening or a market snapshot of what's happening with a call to action, right? Like contact me to schedule an appointment to buy or sell, or talk to you more about your real estate plans for 2026. So it could be a newsletter. It could be a weekly email by week in the month, first week, second week, third week, fourth week. That's basically the components of a newsletter. So instead of sending it all one time, you might send the first week, which is like a market update, what's happening in our local community. The second week might be what's happening in the market snapshot or the numbers. The third week might be like featured properties, right? The fourth week would be something else. And so it could be a weekly version, right, of what that is, every single week with a call to action, right? Hey, let's get together and talk about, what your real estate plans are for 2026. We'll just schedule a meeting. Let us know if you know somebody else. It could also be a video version. So today, like so many people are going to have, they're going to feel more comfortable on video, or more people are getting more comfortable on video, or they just feel it's easier to do on video. So they're going to do a video version of it, right? It's going to be exactly the same, whether it's newsletter, whatever it is, but it's just going to be you talking through, right? You could even do like a lot of people do on TikTok or Instagram, where they've got an article behind them, or they've got a video that plays next to them, and they're going to do a split video where they're commenting on something, or they're commenting on an article, or they're providing that, right? That could be that version of it as well, to be able to get that out. So is it a newsletter? Is it a different email every week? Is it a video version of that? What are we going to get out to our database? The most important thing is, right, that it's real estate specific. because the whole idea of weekly communication is top of mind awareness. When people think of real estate, they think of you. So listen, Brian and I love a good pie recipe. I love pie, right? I love sports, right? I love sports calendars. They're great. Sports calendars are great. Pie recipes are great. They're awesome. The problem with that is I don't know what you do for a living when you send me a sports calendar. I think you're a baker when you send me a pie recipe. So if you can connect those things to real estate, that's really good. And I'm not saying don't do it. If you're going to do those things, do them in addition to your at least weekly communication that is real estate specific with your entire database. You want to do that plus the pie recipe? Awesome. Plus the pie giveaway? Awesome. Plus the sports calendar? Awesome. But if you're doing just that, it's kind of a confusing concept. It's not professional. You're not connecting them to the real estate concept. And when they think of real estate, when they think of the sports calendar, they'll think of you. But when they think of real estate, they may think of somebody else. So let's make sure we're connecting that to real estate. Brian, what else are we missing on the database piece?
This is there was a question in the chat, how many in the weekly database? The answer is as many people as you can possibly have in there. I mean, this is our mass communication plan, right? This is something we're going to put together, and we want to be able to reach hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people, ideally in our target market. I think another question to ask when it comes to database is this is a concept called a core database, right? In working with top producers, I've had the pleasure of coaching teams that close hundreds of millions of transactions a year. I've also worked with people that close, 50 million or 20 million a year or 10 million. And what I've realized is that every business has about 300 people in their core database. Those are the people that like them, know them, trust them, would refer them, all this other stuff, right? The difference in the size of business is largely based on who are the 300 in the core database, right? One person I'm thinking of, one of the people in their 300 is one of the people in their 300 is the mayor of the city that they focus on. It's one of the largest cities in the United States. Another one is like the top developer in that city. There's another agent I'm thinking of. One of his 300 is the general manager of an NFL team in his area, and he works in a high priced area with luxury homes. So it's who are those people? What you do with this core database is, in addition to this kind of the mass communication that may be going to hundreds or thousands of people, we're also communicating with them one-on-one through phone call, through getting face-to-face, ideally at least once a quarter. So the way I want you to think about it is, there's probably, if you got into your database, you'd look at it and say, like, who are my core database? Who are my 300? The reason this number actually also works is because the math works well. If you think about a quarter of the year, that's 13 weeks. You're going to have some kind of week where you're off or on vacation or at an event or something, right? So we'll do the math with 12 weeks. Okay. Take 300 divided by 12. You would need to speak with 25 people in your core database every week. If you did that 5 days a week, that'd be 5 contacts to your core database every day, 5 conversations that you're having with them every day. Now, that would allow you to speak to those 300 people at least once a quarter. If you did that in addition to this weekly database, it will get you an interesting result, which is that even with the average person or average contact in that group of 300 that's communicated that way, just from that group, there's a study that would say that following this kind of a touch program, which will end up being, with this, it'll probably end up being 50 or 60 touches with a weekly email with personal touches as well. An average result would be 6.37%. If you take 6.37%, meaning 6.37% of the number of people communicated with that way would either transact in real estate or refer you to somebody that will transact in real estate every year. So if you take 300 times 6.37%, you get a little over 19 units. So think about it in your market. Would it be worth, talking to 300 people once a quarter plus the weekly email? Just from those 300 people would be 19 units. And again, if one of the 300 is truly influential, if they're connected to a lot of people, they have a big network, everything else, the number is actually going to be quite a bit larger. right?
The most fundamental question that we want answered from our database, we missed, right? We could have started the call with it. If you guys were on screen, we would have started with it, but we included here, which is what are your real estate plans for 2026? The most fundamental question that we want from our entire, if we had the most ideal scenario, you would get 100% of your database to answer for you the question, what are your real estate plans for 2026? Because it would be the easiest way for us to plan. You would know who's going to buy, who's going to sell, who's going to invest, who's going to rent, and who's going to stay in their home. By the way, those are the options: buy, sell, invest, rent, or stay. That's all they can do, right? You'd know what was going to happen. You know how many of the people, like Brian's talking about, were going to transact. And you would also understand how much of number 3, the lead generation, you need to do to close the gap to get to the rest of the people. Another comment I want to make on database, and I'll put it in the chat box here, is there's 4 different ways to grow a database, right? We can build it, buy it, bulk it, or borrow it, right? Build it as lead generation, buy it as buying leads, right? Zillow leads, et cetera, leads that people buy. Bulking it is going and getting your alumni list from your college, right? Or going and getting it's acquiring large lists at a time, right? To be able to do that. Borrowing a database would be doing a partnership with like your loan officer, a partnership with your title, a partnership with your insurance, et cetera, where you're going to co-market to their database. You're borrowing, right, their database to be able to communicate with it. Another way of thinking about borrowing that, right, would be communicating with an agent and saying they're retiring out of the business, right? And you're going to, communicate with their database for a period of time and pay them a referral on any of those leads. You're borrowing it, or right, for a period of time until it's yours, until they're no longer in the business anymore, or until that deal of them kind of sunsetting their career, right, or succession planning, right, they retire or it ends, right? So just kind of the 4 ways we think about scale, building the database. The other statistic we didn't share, Brian, is on an annual basis, between 3 and 5% of Americans over the age of 18 buy or sell real estate. That's it. Those are the numbers. It used to be a much higher number in the 60s and 70s. It was totally different because affordability was at a different level, right? Today, it's at 3 to 5%. That probably won't change anytime soon, and it's been like that for more than the last 10 years. So, if you look at it, the last several years, it's been 3%. Next year, it might be a little bit better. Maybe we get up to 3.5%, but it's about 3%. So to answer the question on, we're talking a lot about database. How many people do I need? Well, if you take the number of deals that you want to close next year, right? And let's say I wanted to close 50 deals next year and divide by 3%, I need at least 1,667 people in my database, right? So another way of just looking at what's my number have to be is, at the very least, you have the number of people you're consistently communicating with your database, right? Where 3% of that number is your unit goal, right? That would be kind of another way of looking at it. That's an easy way to understand that math. And, how quickly can I get to that number and consistently communicate with that group?
So we have one more thing when it comes to database, right? Which is that, Matt, earlier this year, you and I both read this article that kind of made us stop in our tracks, honestly, and go, what? And the headline in the article said something along the lines of, in the last year, there were more home buyers over the age of 70 than under the age of 35.
Yep.
I'll repeat that because some of you were like reading email or something. I get it. Cool. There are more home buyers over the age of 70 than under the age of 35. This is the first time in history that has been true. In fact, it causes us to go a little deeper, right? So I'm going to put this study in the chat in a second that you can reference it as well. That article is based on an NAR study where they studied generational trends of home buyers and home sellers. And we saw that that's true, right? In fact, when it comes to selling homes, you're 4 times more likely to speak to a home seller that's over the age of 70 than a home seller under the age of 35. We go, well, those are extremes, right? So we started looking at the age 45. At the age 45, so people that are 45 and above made up 70% of home buyers and 80% of home sellers in the United States. And under 45 made up 30% of home buyers and 20% of home sellers. So one question that you should ask yourself, or that should beg of you to ask, is, if your database is primarily in people that are under the age of 45, you're less likely to sell as much real estate as if your average age of the people in your database were of an older generation. there's a number of reasons for that, but the main question to be asking yourself is to look at this and say, like, who am I communicating with? How am I communicating with them? And is that the person that's most likely to transact in real estate in 2026? Right? Like we looked at a number of different things, Matt. We got creative even with AI, looking at putting this data versus the US Census Bureau and all these other things, saying, tell us how this will change and when it will change. And the result was, we actually, like, the AI tool that we put in this deep study actually said there's not a way to predict that it will ever change again, meaning that it's more likely that the average age continues to be older, the average home buyer continues to be older, the average home seller continues to be older, the average first-time home buyer continues to be older. And that's been proven true in 2025 throughout this year. The numbers have actually just gotten a little more extreme. So I'm going to put the study that I'm talking about here in the chat, but part of this is, if a large part of your database is a younger demographic, you're gonna have to get really good at asking questions like, what are your parents doing in real estate? What are your grandparents doing in real estate? Like, who else could I be working with? Because there's no bad contact, right? There's no bad person to have in your database, because they may do something, they probably will at some point, right? And they're all connected to people. They play on a sports team with people, or they have kids that go to school, or they go to church, or they're neighbors with somebody that is doing something all the time. And that's where the kind of the fruit of this labor comes from, is figuring out, like, how you network through the people that you know or that you meet to figure out who they know. But this is an important one that is different. So if you sit here going like, Brian, I've been selling real estate for 25 years, cool. It's just never been like this before. So nobody has experience in this, including Matt and I.
Okay, so we've covered setting clear goals. We've covered time blocking. We've covered lead generation strategies and database communication weekly. The last step is accountability. And, we talk about what do top producers do. They understand that, you guys get this analogy that if you go to the gym, right, what's the personal trainer always ask you for? They ask for one more, right? Or they ask for two more or three more, whatever that is. And, people go like, I'm disciplined, I can do it myself. Great. But the idea of one more is whatever you do yourself plus a little extra. That's what accountability is about. It's not always about the fact that, you're not well disciplined, or you can't do it, or people believe that. And you might hear Brian as coaching and go like, well, of course you guys love accountability. It's how you get paid. That's true. But it's also, we're in the role of one more, a little more, the next step. What else? How far could you go? That helps people to achieve their potential, but it also helps them to consistently execute, which you guys told us when we asked at the beginning of the call was the most important thing for us to do. And I would agree. Accountability is really about consistency more than anything. And first and foremost, right? How consistently can we execute? When we think about accountability, right? There's Brian, in the beginning of the conversation, mentioned, I believe, a few of these areas, and bring back to your attention, which is one, you could have an accountability partner, right? You could have somebody, right, that is, the two of you have a common goal. I would keep it really simple. It's like one thing that both of you care about and are working on, and you communicate each day around that one thing. So we're going to set a listing appointment every day, right? Or we're going to set a buyer appointment every day, or we're going to set 3 appointments a day or 4 appointments a day, or whatever that is. But there's a partner that has the same goal, and the two of you are maybe role playing every day, right? Or doing some script practice, wherever that is, right? And you're having this call on a daily basis where you're communicating, you're holding each other accountable to that via text message, right? Or phone. Could be a mastermind group. Now you've got a group of people, and maybe there's some homework or assignments or communication or reporting, or, a WhatsApp group or a group text message that you're communicating with, and you have a common or shared goal, right? Or you're publicly sharing your goals where you're communicating with that mastermind group, right? It could be in real estate brokerage, it certainly can be a mentor, or what some people call a productivity coach, right? Or somebody that's an on-site, a leader, a mentor, a coach, right? On-site, in your office, in your brokerage, person that you have a relationship with, where there's probably some type of, income sharing, right? There's a portion of your commission when you close being shared with that person in exchange for their insight, for their consistent communication, for a weekly meeting, right? It can be structured like that. Then it could go to the level of hiring somebody like Brian or myself, right? Like hiring a coach, right? That's going to take to a higher level. So we're gonna have a weekly call and weekly masterminds. You're gonna have access to our phone, and we're gonna understand what your goals are, and we're gonna hold you to, right, what are the steps that you committed to each week. You're gonna have homework that you're gonna execute on. We're gonna ask you about that. We're gonna create progress on a weekly basis. And so that's the most structured version of accountability. But really, right, like as a starting point, I know a lot of people will say, like, if we ask, they'll say, like, I worked with my kids hold me accountable because I told my kids, if I don't do this, we can't go to Disney World. And they tell me every day, did you do it? Right. Or my spouse holds me accountable because I say, like, we're gonna get this done, and we're gonna take this money and buy the new car or buy the new house or take the vacation. And they ask me every day if I did my job, right? Those are great forms of accountability as well as a starting point, right? Or as a beginning, right, to that. But when we look at these first four, setting clear goals, time blocking, lead generation, consistently pre-selected activities, and database communication weekly, they're really simple. You guys pointed out the problem is consistency, and accountability is about how we close the gap of staying consistent. Brian, what did we miss on accountability here?
I think all of those sources will work for some people. What I'll remind you is that the people that say, I'll hold myself accountable, or this person in my family is going to hold me accountable, I just want you to think, like, have you ever avoided a tough conversation with somebody in your family? I think most people would probably say yes, right? If we're being honest. Well, that's hard to have that person hold you accountable then, right? I mean, like, we have to remember, like, we are salespeople, right? So you're good at negotiating, you're good at selling things. So you could probably sell it to somebody that you're doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, even if you're not, right? So sometimes inviting the accountability of somebody you can trust to be honest with you and say, hey, this was your goal, this is what you said is important for you. I believe it's important too. That's why I don't understand why we're not doing the activities that we said would lead to that. That's actual accountability, right? It means, like, we have to do the things we said we would do so we can get the things that we wanted. So the other place that I would look as a possibility is an accountability partner. Find somebody else that thinks big, is committed to changing an action, something that's really important for them, that you can trust, that you can. Matt and I've worked together for a number of years. We get to share big goals and big dreams with each other, and I know he's going to ask me about it. He knows I'm going to ask him about it, right? Like, you can find partnerships like this that cause you to think big and succeed big together. And if you're willing to invest in your business, you got to look at working with a coach that can not only help hold you accountable, but give you the kind of a shortcut of how to get there quickly. How to make sure you're maximizing your efforts that you are making. But these 5 things, if we go through it, right, if you set clear goals like we talked about, if you're going to follow a time block schedule, you're going to be fully present, you lead gen in a consistent basis, right? Even doing something like the daily 10-4 or getting real about what that means for us. If you get into your database, you're going to send a mass weekly email. You're going to create a core database that you communicate with personally. You're going to look at who comprises my database, and you invite accountability into your life. I believe we're going to see a lot different things, out of you and your business in 2026. Should we open up for questions?
Yeah, we have a question in here. Justine is asking, if your leads are in different areas, how do you handle doing the newsletters and setting out weekly communications without making them a little too niche or too specific to a certain spot?
So I think I'm making an assumption, right, about what Justine's asking, and I hope I have this right. She'll tell us, right? What I think she's asking is that leads are coming from different sources. So maybe they're coming from Instagram, or they're coming from different, like, she's got different caches of sources of people in different areas, right? If that's true, one, I would say, do your absolute best to convert your leads to your database. So capture their email and put them all in one place. At the same time, take what you're sending out to your database, right? So it's going to be this newsletter, whatever it is, and convert it into your social media post, right? That's a way for your followers to be able to see what you're communicating with your database, right? For those of you that are really big on social media, right? Convert it into a text message that you can share that way. So just take the material and share it again that way, right? But I would say, if that's what you're saying, right, then that would be the way I'm saying. The other concept would be, if you're talking about You have really kind of niche groups of people, which I think, right, was kind of the other way of looking at that. If you're talking about real estate, because you're the real estate person, the connected conversation is you talking about real estate. So you don't need to have a different message to different groups of people, right? Because you're the real estate expert communicating with everybody, right? The last comment to that is you also can always choose to have hyper specific small group communication, which can be very effective, but it's going to take a lot more time. So you can always choose to send this group of, I have the moms group that I'm a part of, right? And they're going to get the moms group specific real estate information. And then, this group is going to get the other information. You can do that. You just have to set that up for that cadence.
Yeah, like sometimes you have a dynamically like two different markets you work in geographically or something. Segment your database and create, kind of alter the messaging. It's not going to be too different, honestly. Like probably 80% of what you create, aside from like specific market details or sales or things like that, about 80% of it's going to be the same. And then cater to how you have that segmented. So the idea is like if you had 2 or 3 segments like that, you would still create the material. You'd customize about the 20% that's different and send it just to that segment. So it kind of speaks the language of that group. The other thing I would say is I think that when you're starting, I think what a lot of people do is they try to create this like big market area and they're speaking to like, all things like whatever the greater city, I live in like the Austin area. So it's like trying to tackle like Austin real estate. One of the things I did early on is I like just started talking to like a community, like one neighborhood or one zip code. And like, can I actually, focus on something there, like creating something that was like almost niche, right, in itself, and create a lot of content through that. That actually helped me capture a larger amount of business in something where there was less competition. So you're probably hearing both sides of this, and that's kind of the reason you have 2 people on here talking to you, right? Is you get to hear both sides.
Yeah, that's great. Another question too, thinking, how do you help people build these habits? So we're talking about accountability. We're talking about, doing a daily 10-4 and all of that good stuff. How do you get people to not only hold themselves accountable, but to build the habit to actually do these things?
I think people have to be able to visit the first step is setting clear goals. They have to be able to visit their goals, ideally visually every day, because the building of the habit to do that is the first thing is the trigger of why am I doing this? Right. So I want the reason why I'm doing. That's why step 1 is setting clear goals, right? I want why I'm doing this in front of me every day. So, Brian coached me for 7 years, right? And one of the years he coached me in 2016, I got married and I went on honeymoon in Thailand and Bali. And so that was kind of the big goal for that year. And I paid for my wedding and I paid for my honeymoon. And so I needed another $40,000 to be able to pay for the wedding and the honeymoon to close that gap. And Brian and I worked through the math of, at that point, I was a team leader. So I was a market center, right, leader. And we worked through how many people I would need to hire, right, to be able to make the extra 40,000 based on the way I was paid. And it was 200 agents. So I had a sticky note right next to my desk that was 200, 199, 198, 197, 196, 195. And it was the clarity of, I'm doing this to fund, I already put the deposit on the wedding. I already put the deposit, or I already paid for the flight. Like, I have to do this, right? But I've got it in front of me every day. So I think part of the very first step to me to creating the habit is I clarify my goals and I have a visual cue of why I'm doing the work every day in front of my face.
Right. We love a vision board. I would say, every year people create them every single year, every 6 months, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yep.
Like Matthew's saying, put it in front of you and that'll get you there. Does anyone have any other questions? You want to pop them in the chat? We have Brian and Matt for just a few more minutes. Is there any other final thoughts that y'all want to put out there and kind of wrap this up with?
I mean, my only one is, if you heard everything we just said and we're like, what's one thing I could do right now, right? If you're one of those people, there's always one of those people, right? That they listen to a really long, well-prepared presentation and they go, great, I don't care. What's one thing I could do, right? So if you're that person, I would say text 10 people in your phone right now. What are your real estate plans for 2026? Text the people in your phone. text the people in your database, send an email. What are your real estate plans for 2026? It is the most simple, consistent thing that Brian and I have seen work week in and week out for people to generate business that anybody can do. So that's what I would say.
We had people send it every week of 2025, and it has worked consistently. No matter what week it was, no matter what was going on, we said, what are your real estate plans for 2025? And eventually it got so late in 2025 that we just switched the number and it continued to work.
Yeah.
Yep. So everything else we chat, everything else we said, you were like, I don't know. I hated it, whatever. Cool. Just do that. Right. That would be the action that I would recommend, that we would recommend to take on. But hopefully something else in here was helpful.
Yeah, definitely. To say the least, you guys were great. Thank you so much for taking time out. This is being recorded, so y'all will get a copy of that within the next day or so. And again, Brian, Matt, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for this session. And if you guys need to contact them, feel free.
Yeah, we're easy to contact. I'm sure Brian can put that in there. I can put that in there. I can be reached. I'll put it in, right? My cell phone and my email. There. We're almost got it. Almost got it. There's mine. Brian will have his in there. So there's my email. And I'm sure Brian will be able to do the same thing. And okay.
Oh.
Marisol, right, has a question before we end here. Can you give me an example of what the goal for a brand new realtor would be in 2026? Yeah. How much money do you want to make? Right. There would be my example. And go through those 5 steps of income. Right. So you're asking a really funny question to 2 people that have hired several thousand real estate agents and helped a lot of people do that in our careers and coached over 1,000 agents. The common thing is like, what's the average agent do? Marisol, the average agent sells less than 4 homes a year and makes less than $40,000. So we're not going to talk about that because that's not going to be exciting. It's not why you got in real estate. And we're not going to talk about making $100,000 because according to recent research, right, $100,000 today has the same spending power as $40,000 in 1990. So that's not enough money now, right? So we're going to look for is, what is your goal? And then we're going to work backwards from how much income do I need to make to how many closings do I need? How many agreements do I need to sign? How many appointments do I need to go on? Right. And then guess what we're going to do? Create your time block schedule. Right. So it's clear goals, time block schedule, just like we talked about. My answer would be, if you made me pick a number, I would start with $250,000 in income. Right. If you made me pick transactions, in most market, that's going to be 24 or more transactions. That's probably where I would start if you made me put something on it. But I would rather go through that process with you to make that happen. And I would say grab a leader in your world that can help you do that process.
I would just encourage you to think big, right? Like take something that kind of hurts your brain of like, how would I do that? Like that's probably a good number to start thinking about, right? Like there's a pattern that if you set a big goal, it's going to cause you to think bigger things, like ask bigger questions of yourself, which causes you to take bigger actions like we talked about. Which then is going to lead to a bigger result over time. If you think a small goal, like if you go like, well, how do I close 4 transactions a year? Well, then you only have to answer a very small question. You'll have to take a small action. You're going to get a small result. So in this time where we're talking about what are we thinking about, what are our goals? Think big. Think about something that is not clear today how to do it because it'll actually be exciting, which means you're more likely to put more energy and thought into it, which means you're actually more likely to succeed at a high level.
Yeah, something that feels a little crazy. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks again, guys. Go big or go home. That's what Marisol says. She gets it. She knows. All right, cool.
Great.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Happy holidays.
Thank you all.
Thanks for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Bye.